Hello, everyone. So, welcome once again to Tomoka and another one of our online tastings. This one is celebrating St. Patrick's. Obviously, I didn't call it a St. Patrick's Day tasting because we didn't do it exactly on the day, but we kind of thought it's a little bit easier to do on a weekend. You know, as always, Friday tasting is always good. Like Matthew says there now, it's the happy Friday. It's the Friday feeling. Get some good whiskey down you. Maybe a little bit of chocolate as well. Like a few of you know, we like our chocolate and whiskey. Yeah, hope everyone's doing well. As you guys just come in, obviously just drop us a little comment there. Just let me know that you're coming in okay. What I'll do is usually I drop off just to check our social media to make sure no one's lost. I do believe everyone had an email this week with the link via YouTube, so I don't think anyone's going to be awry, which I'm just checking now. Just a quick point to many of our sort of hardcore regulars, just to reiterate, apologies this week with the whiskey mess up. We are extremely gutted that we couldn't follow through on the Feta Cairn. Very, very, very last minute. We sent the email out, and I think about 5 minutes before the email went live, we had a message through from Feta Cairn saying that they'd run out of stock. And by that time, the email had already gone out. There's nothing much we can do other than just put the tickets as sold out. So we had a lot of you guys messaging straight away. So yeah, we apologise. We can't follow through with that. We are going to try and put together a tasting just caliber as that one, you know, as we always do. As soon as we know about that, we'll let you guys know. It's a good sign from us because we would have sold out within literally 5 minutes of that tasting. So that was a good thing to see. But yeah, I think we've mentioned a few times in the last few tastings, we've had a hell of a lot on from private and corporate tastings that we've kind of built up over the last few months. That's kind of just about coming to an end. We've got a few of the big ones. So we're going to be looking to do quite a few of our own. So we are in the works of getting those together, chatting with a few whiskies, a few gin brands, and we'll launch those as soon as we can. But yeah, for today, it's all about Irish whiskey and JJ Corey with some very nice, tasty whiskies, including one that's I've just found out is obviously quite hard to get hold of, which is always good. And we're joined by a special guest, which I'll leave Jas to introduce. Other than that, I think numbers-wise, we're looking okay. I've tried to check through my diary because we've got quite a few watching from the same household again. So I think we are potentially missing a couple. But what I'll do is I'll bring Jas on. He can do his brief intro, introduce our special guest, and then we'll obviously get going. Hopefully by that point, everyone should be here and ready to go. So let me just bring Jas in. There you are. Hello.
Hi.
You good? Yeah, all good. So I think we're looking good on numbers. By my count, we're missing, I think, 2 or 3. Tim can't join us just yet because he's got his dilemma. So hopefully he'll join us in a little bit. I'll just log off and make sure everyone's good to go. But if not, I'll leave you to get things going.
Cool. Hello, everyone. Thanks, Shane, very much. So it's our St. Patrick's Day tasting, and we thought we would bring you something that was a little bit different. We could have gone with, you know, some more sort of familiar names when it comes to Irish whiskey that you might have known, but we thought, you know, let's bring you something as always a little bit different. So we partnered up with this wonderful brand, JJ Corey, and they're new to us as well, so hopefully they're new to you. And we are joined tonight by the lovely Neve, who is the brand ambassador, and she's a brand ambassador of the whole brand, so she's going to take us through everything there is to know about JJ Corey. We're going to try all 3 of the whiskies. We're going to have them in different ways, so some of you are messaging saying we've only got 3 whiskies. You've actually got all 4, but we're gonna mix up and play around with them. So as usual, make your comments, let us know what you think, give us your notes on what you're getting as well. But I'm going to pass you over. I actually get to sit back and do very little today because Neve's going to guide us through the whole thing. So let's bring Neve in. Hi, Eve, how are you?
Hello. Happy St. Patrick's Week. I'm making it a week this year. It's not just a day.
Yes, correct. I mean, well, it's probably a week. Isn't it a week normally anyway? Like from some of my Irish friends.
I mean, yes, if you're asking me, definitely.
So look, thanks for joining us. I know it's Friday night, so I appreciate the time. Did you get up to much on the actual day on Wednesday?
Yeah, so this year, this is our second St. Patrick's Day in lockdown. So this year we kind of look, everyone has had to go digital this year, and I'm sure you guys have been participating in loads and loads of online tastings. So I have had 5 tastings this week. So this is my 5th and final tasting of the week. And it's the one I'm most excited for because we get to drink the Flintlock. But on St. Patrick's Day, we did a tour of the JJ Corrie farm, the McGuan family farm, where we bond and blend all of our whiskies. And that was quite cool. We had people joining us from all over the world. So that was just a nice kind of, community thing to do. So it's a little different this year. Of course, we'd rather be in the pub or out actually, doing tastings and throwing really cool parties. But we live in hope for next year, for sure.
Of course. I'm just going to adjust my microphone. Hang on one second.
Hear me better. So apologies for that.
That sounds good.
Yeah, good. All right. So look, we've got a lot of people. They're ready to try the whiskies. They want to hear the stories. So what do you want to do? How do you want to do this? Do you want to tell us a bit about the brand and we move on to the first one, or?
Okay, so this is what I think we should do. I think from the get-go, let's pour a measure of the Hansen, which should be half of the measure from the pouch. And what I'll do is, while you guys are nosing, I'm going to tell you just like the introduction to JJ Corrie and whiskey bonding. Then we're going to taste the Hansen. And then as we try each drink, we're going to get more and more into the story. Before we get into it, though, the reason why there is a double measure of the Hansen is because all of you should have received a bottle of Seckford Mixer. So for our final dram, just to have something very refreshing, and if you're continuing to drink for the evening, we're going to make a Hansen highball. So keep a measure back to have for the end of the tasting.
Cool.
All right, let's pour some Hansen.
So just for you guys, this is what the bottle looks like. This is the Hansen. This is, as Neve said, pouch number 1. But this is, and they all kind of follow the same suit, right, in terms of labeling?
They absolutely do. So when I get deeper and deeper into the story, they're actually inspired by JJ Corrie's traditional labels, which look a little bit like this. So they're quite, they've got like a really old world heritage look to them, but they're quite modern with their color. And once we get into the tasting of every dram, I'll tell you the story behind each bottling, because they're all rooted in really interesting local stories, which I think you'll find interesting.
Yeah.
So I guess, Jas, you were right. At JJ Corrie, we are completely unlike any other Irish distillery on the market right now. And the reason for this is because we are Irish whiskey bonders, and we are the first whiskey bonders in living memory to have completely resurrected this tradition. So first of all, what is whiskey bonding? So whiskey bonding used to be a really commonplace practice in Ireland up until about 100 years ago. A really, really vibrant tradition, and whiskey bonders could be found in every town and village across Ireland. So whiskey bonding is the practice of sourcing whiskies from distilleries, local distilleries, putting it into casks. So back then, bonders would have used whatever casks they had access to. they would mature it in their bonded warehouse for 3 years or longer, depending. And they would particularly put a huge emphasis on blending and doing custom blends and bottling the whiskey. So back then in Ireland, you know, at our peak, there would have been over 100 distilleries in Ireland, and they focused predominantly on the distillation of whiskey, and they relied on the bonder as the middleman to bring product to market. So back then, there used to be two types of whiskey bonders. You had large-scale whiskey bonders that ran huge commercial operations in our capital, Dublin. And their goal was to feed the Commonwealth and the USA with Irish whiskey. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you had small-scale rural Irish whiskey bonders like J.J. Corrie. And these guys were typically merchants, publicans, grocers. You know, they would have sold everything in their shops, from tea, guns, ammunition, musical instruments, the whole lot. And it's with the rural whiskey bonders that you would have seen a lot of small custom blends being produced. So everything was going great until the 1930s, when the Irish whiskey industry collapsed. And I'm sure you have some real Irish whiskey aficionados on joining us this evening. But if anyone is new to Irish whiskey, there's a couple of key reasons why the industry collapsed in the 30s. So we used to be the absolute at the pinnacle of producing whiskey in the world. We were the top exporters. Scotch was deemed kind of the more bottle shelf drink to consume. But after the Depression, followed by Prohibition in the United States, an economic war with the UK following the War of Independence between Ireland and the UK, that trade war effectively cut us off from trading with any other English-speaking country in the world. And also the invention of the coffee still, otherwise known as the column still. Ironically, this piece of distilling technology was invented by an Irishman. It was a type of distillation technology that the Scots embraced, but the traditional distillers in Ireland wanted to stick to their pot stills. And that meant that, you know, over a really short period of time, the Scots were out distilling us and we couldn't keep up with demand. So quite quickly, in the space of just a couple of years, a lot of Irish distilleries shut their gates. And this meant that bonders were no longer able to source their whiskey. And very quickly, they started to shut down and, you know, stop this beautiful practice. I guess one of the biggest whiskey bonding families in Ireland, and they were the kind of last holdout of the tradition, would have been Mitchell and Sons, who were the original makers of Green Spot, Yellow Spot, Red Spot whiskies. That brand has since been revived by Pernod Ricard. But I'm sure you guys recognize the name immediately. So they would have been whiskey bonders based in Dublin. So, you know, when I went home to Ireland for Christmas, we had a really nice meeting as a team before we broke up for the year. And my colleague Eric found this really old document to say that so we're based in County Clare, and the largest town in County Clare is called Ennis. And in the mid-1800s in Ennis, there was over 63 whiskey bonders registered. So Ennis is not a big town, okay? We're talking small, like really, really small. So that was so fascinating to see that, you know, on every street, there was at least 2 or 3 whiskey bonders alone. So you can imagine the flavor diversity, the diversity of blends, the regional flavors of whiskey that would have been available to people back then. But the good news is we've brought back whiskey bonding. Okay.
So is bonding similar to? So it's very much an Irish concept, right? But is it like being an independent bottler?
It is. It's like the Irish version of being an independent bottler. But I think the main differentiating factor is you have to own a bond to be classified as a whiskey bonder in Ireland. That's something that is not easy to do. And I can talk about that later as we discuss, like, you know, how we set up the company. And then the other like key defining thing that sets us apart slightly is the huge focus on blending and creating blends.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think, will we have a nose of the Hansen?
Yeah.
So the Hansen is a blended grain Irish whiskey. And we believe that for quite some time, like this is the first blended Irish whiskey to be on the market for quite some time. And that's because the Irish grains that you see in the market right now, they're single grains. So it's stock sourced from the one distillery. Whereas the Hansen is comprised of whiskey sourced from 2 distilleries. The age on the Hansen is 10-year-old, 9-year-old, and 4-year-old grain whiskey, all ex-bourbon cask.
Okay. Some people have already given their what they're smelling.
Oh my God, amazing. Really keen to hear what people think about it. We released the Hansen during the summer of lockdown number 1.
Okay.
Raisin ice cream, absolutely. And I think that is a nosing note that's so synonymous with the bourbon influence. Personally, I get a lot of like ginger, bit of vanilla, some like citrus, kind of orange peel, that vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, vanilla notes of pear, subtle spice. Yeah, I get a lot of baking spices with the Hansen.
On the palate, it's really got that lovely peppery tingle, all that lovely spiciness that you're talking about. And then there's this lovely fruity stuff going on as well.
Absolutely, it's quite vibrant. So right now on the farm, we are blending our next batch of the Hansen, and Eric, who works on production with Louise, our founder, has been sending me some behind the scenes video. So it was really interesting to see how the Hansen is comprised of 3 different flavor blocks from our library of whiskey flavors. So that's something I'll get into more, but specifically flavor wise, what we pull from is like the grassy and hay flavor block. And then you get the sweet vanilla and citrus fruit blocks. So that's it. We call it the G3 category.
Okay.
So it's amazing to see those 2 come together, because I feel like when you get that grassy hay vibe mixed with sweetness, it's out of those notes that you get that little peppery kick, the blending spices, the baking spices, pardon me, come to the forefront more so.
Yeah. And lots, I mean, that vanilla almost turns into like toffee. It turns into this creaminess as well, right in the middle.
Absolutely. It's a really good sipper. It has a really nice mouthfeel. And I think it's a really, really accessible grain. We love grain at JJ Corrie, and we think it's a really undersung category. So we felt quite adamant that we wanted to create like a really, really delicious grain that would, you know, make people's heads turn a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So most of your stuff is grain, or you use a bit of malt as well every now and then?
For the Hansen?
general, like in some of the other stuff you do?
Absolutely. So when we move on to the Gale, which is our second drink, that's 60% malt, 40% grain. And we also have the Flintlock, which is our single malt. So maybe now's a really good time to get into it. So just to actually finish up on the Hansen, it's bottled at 46% ABV.
Yeah.
Non-chill filtered natural color. We don't use any artificial coloring at all at JJ Corrie. And one of the reasons why we made the Hansen is because we also wanted to create a whiskey that would really encourage people to mix. So that's why we really showcase the Hansen as the perfect whiskey for a highball serve.
Yeah.
That higher ABV means that the whiskey can really still keep its character when it's mixed with a really good mixer that, you know, doesn't have a really high sugar content. And all of a sudden you've got, you know, a really sippable whiskey turn into something that's actually really quite refreshing and delicious. And it's the perfect kind of summer go-to drink because I love whiskey neat. I drink it all day, but it's nice to have that option and to have that, you know, diversity.
Yeah, I mean, so it's really interesting because obviously the guys will get to try it as you say, as a highball, which is kind of the other part of what it's meant to be. But as a whiskey on its own, I mean, given not only the lightness of the color, but you know, the flavors that we're talking about, right? Generally quite light, but you would know this, but it seems to me like this is a whiskey that would really develop over time, and as it sits there, you know, if you left it for a period of time, it's going to change, and you're going to start seeing it evolve like a really sort of decent aged whiskey would.
Absolutely. And I think a big reason behind that is the selection of casks that we've used. The 4-year-old was casked in some really juicy grade A bourbon barrels, sorry. And anyone that visits the farm and tastes our 4-year-old stocks are blown away by the complexity and the flavor profile for such a young whiskey. And that's why we felt really confident putting it into the Hansen. I completely agree with you. Every time I go back to the Hansen, I feel like I'm picking up something new.
Yes, it's got that ability just to keep changing, right? And sort of developing with maybe exposure to oxygen, or you know, just being out of the bottle and breathing.
Absolutely. And I think as well, it can take ice as well. So for some people that like their whiskey on the rocks, it can take an ice cube and it's fine.
Yeah. Has anyone ever said anything about tropical notes maybe? Has anyone ever mentioned that?
Yeah, I got in a tasting last night, I got dried pineapple with the Hansen, and I got coconut as well.
Yeah. I'm getting some of that for sure.
Yeah. So I had a really crazy nosing note thrown out at me at the beginning of the week, and since they've said it, it's all I can smell on the nose. Does anybody get basil on the nose?
Wow.
Okay, I know. It's just okay. Refresh.
Okay, if anyone can get basil.
Yeah.
So people are asking what's behind the name. You're probably going to come to this, right?
Okay, so glad you asked. So the Hansen is named after the Gauger Hansen, otherwise known as the Gauger, otherwise known as the local exciseman who became JJ Corrie's son-in-law. So when we discovered that his son-in-law ended up being an exciseman, we thought that was really hilarious. And we could imagine the banter, the crack, and the absolute bursting of chops between the two of them.
Mm.
For John Hanson to be keeping JJ Corrie in check.
Yeah.
And we thought that it was a really nice nod to like the family ties with, you know, whiskey bonding. And we thought that would be a really good homage to the family. So at the back of every Hanson bottle is a little bowler hat. And these were the fashion statement at the time of the whiskey bond of the gougers.
Oh yeah. So do they all have one? No.
To be wearing the bowlers.
Yeah.
So the excise man were in. So we found it in kind of old, like archival records. And it was in a passage in a book that we had found as well, for like dated back to the time. You'd know they were coming because you could hear the bustling of their duster coats that would be almost to the floor length, and their bowler hats rounding the corners. And it was like, that was the signal to say, get the paperwork ready. We got to make sure everything's square before they go to the shop.
Okay, so I'm not getting basil, but I'm getting loads more coconut. Loads of coconut now.
Okay.
For me, I don't know if anyone else has had a chance, but for me, it's all
Okay.
about
Paddy Green has said basil faulty.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I'll let it go. I'm going to let the basil go.
Are you getting it now?
I really can.
Are you?
Yeah. It's very subtle, but it's there. It's like a really, because you know how fragrant it is. It's like I can get that lingering at the back. But look, that's the thing. And that's what I actually love about these part of the tastings, like how different everyone's palates are and what they pick up on.
Is he getting basil? No, I can't get it.
No.
Can't get it.
Try again later.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to come back to it. Yeah, good. So is there more that you want to say on the Hanson?
No,
We're good.
we've pretty much covered everything, but maybe before we pour the Gale, I might tell you a little bit more about JJ Corrie. Or if you guys are still nursing your Hansons, please feel free to drink on. So in 2013, Louise McGuan, the founder of JJ Corrie, she had quit her job with Diageo. She had been working globally in drinks for the guts of 20 years. And she'd been working for multinationals all around the world, like Pernod Ricard, Moet Hennessy, and Diageo. And it was always her dream to set up her own whiskey company, whiskey business. She's from a beautiful parish in the west of Ireland called Kilrush. So she returned back to her family farm, and she really wanted to build a grain to glass distillery to secure the future of her farm. Because basically it's been in her family since records go back beyond the famine. So in 2013, Louise knew that the Irish whiskey industry was going to have absolutely huge growth. And back then, the innovation was you set up a grain to glass distillery. Okay, that's what you did. That was the innovative thing to do back then. And when Louise was researching the local whiskey history of Coire Clare and West Clare and County Clare as a whole, because there was a lot of legal and illegal distilling back in the day. So a lot of poitín was being made locally, which is basically Irish moonshine. And when Louise was researching, she discovered this whiskey label. So I'm trying to get it in a way that it's not going to shine. So it says, matured Irish whiskey blonded and carefully bottled by J.J. Corrie, Henry Street, Kilrush. And she had discovered another one of his old shop labels that had cited Whiskey Bonder on it. And that was a piece of terminology that she'd never come across before and was completely unfamiliar to her. So when Louise dug a lot deeper, she went through old parliamentary records both in Ireland and the UK, because we would have still have been part of the Commonwealth back then. And she discovered that JJ in the mid 1860s was born in the same parish as her, just 2 miles up the road.
Mhm.
He was one of 13 children. And back then, you know, the oldest child would have inherited the farm, and the rest of the children would have to go on and kind of fend for themselves. So a lot of, you know, what was quite typical of the time, because it was after the famine, a lot of his brothers and sisters had emigrated to America. But JJ stayed in Curraclare, and what he did was he became an auctioneer. And then once he'd kind of made his fortune a little bit as an auctioneer, he opened up his own shop in 1890 and became a whiskey bonder. So at that point of history, we were still part of the Commonwealth. Or he set up his shop in Kilrush, which is our local town. It had a very deep port and was quite a commercial hub back then, because Kilrush would have been the last stop before America and the first stop on the way back.
Mm.
And this meant that JJ had access to really unique casks. So he had rum casks from Jamaica, port, sherry casks. He had Saint Julien Bordeaux barrels also. And he would have matured his whiskey in these barrels. And, you know, back then, 100 years ago in rural Ireland, that's a pretty exotic flavor profile to be dealing with. And it's really interesting. And when Louise discovered this, it just hit her like a ton of bricks. She was like, we're bringing whiskey bonding back. And that's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
So the first thing we did was, you know, Louise had to go out and she had to source a bunch of whiskey to get this thing off the ground. So we source whiskey in 2 ways, okay? Number one, we source old, rare, matured Irish whiskey from the more established distilleries in Ireland, okay? Namely Bushmills and Cooley, because they're the only distilleries that have it.
Yeah.
And then the second thing we do is we source new make baby whiskey, specifically from the newer independent distilleries that are jumping up around Ireland. And our ultimate goal is we're trying to source as many styles and as many flavors of Irish whiskies from these distilleries so that we can build up this library of whiskey flavors, so that, you know, the world is our oyster when it comes to the liquid we choose and the casks we select to pair with that liquid.
Yeah.
So I think now is a really good time to pour some Gale. So that should be marked as bottle number 2.
3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's bottle number 3. Sorry. Yeah.
Got it. Oh, that's the wrong one. Okay. We're doing batch 2.
I don't know if people have poured it. Maybe they have. But for me, I'm getting like butterscotch. That's what I'm getting.
Absolutely. So I think you're going to love this. The Gale is a really good example of what we do with our sourced whiskey. Okay, the older matured stuff that we source while we're waiting for the younger stuff to mature on the farm. It is a blend of 60% malt and 40% grain. So the grain component is comprised of 9-year-old grain, ex-bourbon cask. And then the malt component is the malt component is essentially 3 whiskies that have been vatted individually before being blended together to form the final malt component, okay? So there's 2 core vattings at the heart of the Gale. So number 1 is whiskies that were bonded in 2002. So they would be 17 years old in this blend. And then whiskies bonded in 2006, which would be 15 years old in this blend. So they form the heart of the Gale. And then as a top dressing, we have 29-year-old ex-sherry butt single malt whiskey on top. So it is an incredibly complex blended Irish whiskey. And Louise did that quite purposefully because when she set up the company, you know, blended Irish whiskey was really seen as a bottom shelf drink, you know, and Louise wanted to change that perception completely, just change it on its head. So she inverted the ratio. Normally, blended Irish whiskies are 60% grain, 40% malt, but she flipped it. And by incorporating older whiskies and being so transparent and talking about it, you know, now others have been jumping on board, and the Irish, you can get some phenomenal Irish blended whiskies right now. And, you know, as whiskey bonders, it's a category that we really want to champion. So on the nose, you should be getting just juicy fruit bomb flavors like peach, nectarine, and a lot of tropical notes.
Yeah.
I get a lot of dried pineapple with the Gale.
Okay. When you said the peach and the nectarine, I'm getting that lovely stone fruit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Shane said butter shortbread as well.
Absolutely.
Some biscuity note. Yeah. That's really good. So the ages, how many? Two ages, 17 and
29-year-old malt ex-sherry butt.
Yeah.
17-year-old malt ex-bourbon, 13-year-old malt ex-bourbon, and 9-year-old grain ex-bourbon.
So that grain gives it that real freshness as well, doesn't it? And that's where that.
Absolutely. And when you taste it, you're going to get this insane rounded out texture and flavor at the back of your mouth when you taste the Gale. Will we go for it?
Let's do it. Wow.
Yeah. So you get a lot of that initial fruitiness, absolutely at the top of the palate.
Yeah.
And then you get this kick of peppercorn spice midway through. And then that kind of like mouth smacking creaminess at the back.
But also in the middle, I've got this. It's like the wood, right? It's like that woodiness, which is only there for a touch, but it's kind of showing you the age of the whiskey, as in terms of its character.
Absolutely, I kind of get that. For me, I kind of describe it more as like minerality, like that texture, like you know that you'd get from like bergamot tea.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Gale is 46% ABV also. And
Yeah.
same as Hansen, same as all our whiskies, non-chill filtered, natural color.
That's what it's like. Very similar again to the first one.
Yeah.
There's an interesting story about the name, isn't there?
There really is. So the Gale is named the Gale because JJ Corrie was a whiskey bonder. He was a publican. He was a grocer. He used to be an auctioneer. He also loved to cycle, and he invented a bike called the Gale. So the Gale is an Irish word, and it means Irish person, basically, or something that is Irish. And we thought it was like a really cool nod to his inventive spirit, basically. He seemed to be like a jack of all trades.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So he was also like the social secretary of the cycling club in Kilrush. I feel like he was the Beyonce of his time. Like there was for us normal people, there's like 24 hours a day, but he can fit in 36 hours. You know what I mean?
He's a busy man, right? Really busy man.
A very busy man. A very busy man. Yeah, Anthony, I agree with you. Yeah, I think the tannic vibe is really coming from the sherry influence. I completely agree with that. And lots of peachiness for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. There's a lot going on, isn't there? So much. Like there's so many layers. And this time, in a different way to the first one, each time you go back, you find something new, but in a different way, because the first one was more like it evolved. So some new things started popping up, whereas this one is so deep and complex that depending on how you're feeling at that time, you pick up something different.
Absolutely, absolutely. Look, the Gale is a completely different beast, and personally, I think it's a lot more complex than the Hansen. There's just, it's such a complicated blend. Like I cannot describe to you how complicated it is to make the blend. We did not make it easy on ourselves.
Yeah.
But the payoff from flavors is unbelievable. And, when I talked about, how we source our whiskey and our library of flavors, once we source a whiskey, we categorize every cask into a particular flavor block. And with the Gale, there's 14 to 17 flavor blocks that we use in this whiskey. Okay. So we're partially disgorging some casks. It really is a complicated and really intricate process.
Yeah, definitely sounds it. It sounds it. So what's really good as well, and it's great for our customers, is that we don't often do blends. Really, we concentrate on malt a lot of the time, right? Only when we do Japanese, maybe we sort of look at blends. But what's really good is that, and I'm sure for many of them, to have a blend that has so much complexity to it and is really good, like there's so much mouthfeel and everything. I'm pretty sure it's going to surprise a lot of people that this is actually just a blend. I shouldn't say just a blend, but it is a blend.
Absolutely. And I completely get what you're saying. I have done trade shows all around the world, okay? And I'm sure you've been to many of a whiskey show, and you understand when I say people tend to lose their filters halfway through the show. And, the amount, like if I had $1 every time someone would say, I don't drink Irish and I do not drink blends, when I have people taste the Gale that are like hardcore single malt drinkers, like this is the converter, and they'll be praying to the gospel of JJ Corrie moving forward, like they've been evangelized completely. And you know, that was the whole reasoning behind the Gale. Louise really wanted to create like a really, really ultra premium blend, basically.
Yeah, and I think it's achieved, right? It's
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I hate saying it, but like we talk about awards and stuff like that, like, you know, a lot of awards are just marketing. But some awards really matter to us. In particular, like the Irish Whiskey Awards and the San Francisco Spirit Awards and World Whiskey. And the Gale is decorated year in, year out, like winning gold. And it is like it's sold all around the world, and it really is the drink that converts people to enjoying blends.
yeah. Oh, someone's getting mince. Shane's getting mince pies.
And Anthony's saying green apple. I totally agree with that. And I think green apple, when you say Irish whiskey, everybody's immediately thinks of green apples, but I really get it with the Gale. A very, very fresh, crisp green apple for sure.
Good note. Mince pie, definitely from Paddy. I can kind of see what they're saying is that biscuitiness with that kind of dried raisin fruit.
I'm not a mince pie person at all, so I've been clearly blocking that note. That I'm like, I can't do this.
I love a mince pie, so that's good for me.
Oh,
that's lovely. It's so good, isn't it? It's really good. So, because you know the thing is, even though you have a good base, right? So she's getting some really good malts, really good grains, a lot of age, different casks. You know, that's only part of the job. You have to then marry them so that they speak.
Absolutely. And that's something we take very, very seriously. We're all about really quality blends and creating these with unique and interesting flavors. And that's like at the forefront of everything we do, because that's how we set ourselves apart from other distilleries. It's our house style, and the Gale is very representative of what we want our house style to be.
Love it.
Yeah. Okay. I'm really glad you like that one. I'm really glad you like that.
Although I am looking forward to this next one. That's the one
I know.
I'm surprised. I'm really surprised by the first two, and I've not tried them. Previous to tonight, I deliberately didn't. But this was the one that I was really looking forward to from the start.
Okay, I think you're gonna love it. I think you're gonna love it.
So while you tell them, I'm just going to show them the bottle.
Okay, so the Flintlock Batch 2 is our single malt. Okay, so it is a blended. So it is a blend. Okay. It has got the age statement of 14 years old on it, but there's actually, so the Flintlock is a really small limited edition batch, okay? Because what we do is we go into the rack house and we select 3 of our single malt barrels that are kind of at the pinnacle of their maturation, basically, and we marry them together. So the Flintlock is a blend of 3 casks. So one of them is 14 years old and the other 2 are 18 years old. So it is quite an aged whiskey for sure.
And you always have to put the youngest age on a age statement.
You have to put the youngest age on the age statement. So just know there is 14 and 18 years old in the whiskey. So
a quick question, sorry to interrupt your flow. So are the casks always the same? Because it's a batch, so you can change a cask year on year.
That's it. So what we do specifically with the Flintlock is it's partial disgorgement. So one of the barrels that we use for Flintlock batch 1 was used for batch 2. because we just partially disgorged it for the first batch. And then we introduced 2 new barrels that still belong to the same flavor blocks. So you're still getting a pretty consistent style to batch 1.
Okay.
So
Wow. There's a whole new lot of flavors going on here.
I'm honestly, I'm so excited that we get to drink it tonight. I can't believe it. I'm like savoring it because I only had a tiny sample. I don't even have a bottle here. My supply of Flintlock has been cut off. So I just have.
Well, I should feel very very privileged that we have some here. Rob is also here, right? So Rob's our brand rep for these brands, as well as Glen Turret and some other ones. And he also is joining us because he hasn't tried, or he doesn't really get to try this either. So if you're out there, hey Rob.
I feel really bad. I sound like a really bad brand rep, not giving the sales guys any Flintlock.
Oh, that wasn't a dig at you. I'm gonna get to try other stuff.
I promise, Rob, you'll get a bottle someday.
So this is really weird, right? This almost has. I'm getting really dark berries. I'm getting coffee. I'm getting like marzipan. I don't know if any of these are what you get, but this is
marzipan, toasted almond all day on the Flintlock. And I get a lot of coconut, and I get some of that like that peachiness. I get more peach than tropical fruit with the Flintlock.
Okay, do you?
Yeah, I get peachiness, but marzipan is like the leading note. It's so almondy.
Yeah, marzipan's definitely there. It's almost like a gatto, right? I'm almost getting like a Black Forest gatto with hints of that darker chocolate, the cherry or marzipan, and yeah, this creaminess as well. That's kind of what I'm.
Absolutely. It's so funny when I first went around tasting Flintlock, people would say to me it's like a breakfast whiskey because it's so sweet and like dessert like, which I think is pretty funny.
Yeah. And the creaminess on the glass as well is like amazing.
Yeah, it is. Will we taste it? Because the texture is unbelievable. The mouthfeel on it. Okay. Yeah.
Wow. Totally different to the other two.
Yeah.
There's a there's a density, there's a weightiness to it. It's like that malt really comes through, and you notice the lack of the grain compared to the other two.
Absolutely. It's it's a completely different avenue. 1000%. Yeah, I get cherry too. I get cherry on the palate for sure. You're getting that kind of forest fruit, like lip smacking notes with it.
Yeah.
It's so complex. Like personally, I find it really, really complex.
Yeah.
And just to note also, all of the whiskies are ex-bourbon cask.
Are you allowed to say which distilleries?
Yeah, we can. So they're all sourced from Bushmills.
Are they?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And they're just, it's like on their own individually, they're nice. They are nice whiskeys, but it's when you blend them together, it just changes it. It elevates it so much.
I mean, the blended market is what's kept the whiskey market going over the years, time and time again. You know, when we've had so many mothball distilleries, and like you say, the Irish whiskey market, you know, production just going, you know, through the floor. It's the blended market that has really kept whiskey ticking over.
Yeah.
You know, and then wow, 400 bottles only.
Yeah.
You see that?
It was a really small run, And originally, so the Flintlock batch one looked a lot like the rest of the core range, except it had a red colorway. But when back in 2019, we did a little bit of Flintlock batch one left over, and we did a special edition label for America. And that's the design of the bottle that we have now, because we loved it so much and it looked really rock and roll and cool.
Yeah.
That we decided to keep it.
So Flintlock, the name.
Okay, so this is a cool story. On Louise's farm, there's a barn, and that used to be, but before it was a barn, it used to be the original homestead of her like great grandmother. Okay, and a couple of years ago, the roof had fallen in, and when they went in to fix it, because it was a thatched roof, they discovered hidden in the rafters was a perfectly preserved flintlock pistol.
Wow.
So Louise was like, okay, what the hell? Got it dated by a historian, and it turns out it was from 1790,
Wow.
which was a huge time of rebel activity against the British Crown in Ireland. Like, we're talking Wolfe Tone, the White Boys were quite prominent in County Clare. And it's always been, there's certain counties in Ireland that are quite known for having like their kind of rebellious independent streak. And that would have always been like difficult territories for the Crown to manage. And West Clare was one of them. And Louise's, so the homestead was always known as the safe house. But because we're Irish and we love telling stories and we love exaggerating, Louise was never sure whether it was like an actual safe house for rebels. But you know, you just kind of go along with it and say, oh yeah, safe house, cool.
Yeah.
But when she discovered the gun and had it dated, she was like, this was a rebel hideaway. And we're going to name a whiskey after this because it's
amazing.
Really, yeah.
That's such a cool story.
It's so cool. So we still have the pistol. We got it preserved in plexiglass, and it's on display in the barn where it was found, which we have converted into our tasting room. So if you hop on our Instagram or our Facebook page, you'll see the tasting room, and it's pretty much in its original condition, you know, stone whitewashed walls, flagstone floors, a huge open fireplace. It really is like an incredible building that's still standing all these years. Like it was originally built at the beginning of the 1700s, which is kind of nuts.
And are people allowed to go to the farm? I mean, is it like a visitor centre type deal or not?
So it's by appointment only. And the reason why is we're a really small team. We're 5 people in total at JJ Corrie. So it is, and we just do really small numbers on the tour, so that it's a really hands-on experience. So you get to visit the rack house, which I'm going to tell you about in a few minutes. You get to open up casks, taste whiskey from the barrels. You get to see our Bonders blending room, and you get to do a tasting session in the barn with our core range and with some of our really limited edition small batch whiskies.
Yeah. I love that aniseed. I like that, Anthony.
Ooh, I've never picked up on that before.
I'm not getting it, but I like the fact that it could be there.
Absolutely.
I'm just getting like a milky coffee. That's one of the other things I'm getting, which again I don't think anyone else is getting it, but that's I keep getting it. I keep coming back to it.
That's really interesting.
That's a lovely. It'd be good actually. So let us know which ones you're preferring so far: the Hanson, the Gale, or the Flintlock. All really different. All really kind of unique in their own right. So I'm going to tell you which one I like so far.
Yeah.
That one.
Oh my God, that's amazing. I really like that one, seeing as you're not a big blend guy.
That's the one I would. I'm super like surprised by that.
Yeah.
Really like that.
And I think that's why people love the Gale. It really grabs them by surprise and it kind of captures their imagination a bit, which is, that's the fun thing about, drinking whiskeys and discovering whiskeys.
Yeah. Matthew says Hanson, but he happily drink a whole bunch. Shane's also slightly drawn to the Gale, but he loves the Flint as well, the Flintlock.
Love.
The Flintlock's really not. Which is your favourite? I mean, I don't suppose you can have a favourite, but if you had to choose one, right, tonight I'm going to go and pick up a bottle. Which one is it?
For tonight, I would probably do the Hanson. You know what? It really depends on the occasion, right? Like it really does. If I was chilling, I would go with Gale.
Yeah.
After this call, I'm going to hang out and mix a few drinks. So I'm going to stay on Hanson for the night.
Yeah.
And then Flintlock is I really feel like it's the fireside whiskey, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's when, I want it to be I say a cold summer because I'm Irish. It's like a cold summer night. We're sitting by like the bonfire, or it's winter, it's Christmas time.
Yeah.
Flintlock all the way.
Yeah. Anthony said Flintlock, but the Gale all day for me. Al said he likes a Gale and the Flintlock, with Hanson coming in third. Paddy said Flintlock, but the Gale wins again. So wow.
That's amazing. In the comments, I want to know two things. Do you drink Irish whiskey often, first of all? And if you do, what normally is your go-to style of Irish whiskey? Is it the pot stills like Redbreast? Is it, the single malts, the blends, or grain? So I'd love to hear what brands have been your go-to if you feel like typing in. Okay, so I have to tell you a little bit more about the farm, and then so sit back, enjoy your Flintlock, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the farm. So I told you how we source our whiskey. So the other important thing that we source is our barrels, our casks, and this is something that Louise does herself. So she, pre-COVID would travel the world to source really juicy grade A barrels. And this is because, as bonders, we feel a huge amount of responsibility over the fact that, we're shepherding whiskey into the barrel and we're responsible for the maturation of it. So one way in which we can influence that is via, our barrel selection. So our wood program is paramount to what we do. When you look at our core range, you see, okay, it's really straight up classic Irish whiskey flavors. But we've got an experimental side too. And a year and a half ago, it's nearly 2 years ago now, we released the world's first tequila and mezcal influenced Irish whiskey. It was called the Battalion. And we have a whole experimental cask series that's kind of ongoing on the farm. So we're always working with, small artisanal drinks producers and trying to source barrels that they use so that we can impart these like unique flavors onto our whiskey. So that's really important. And then, we mature everything in our purpose-built rack house. So this is, if you visited the JJ Corrie farm today and saw the rack house, it is like a Frankenstein's bride between a Kentucky-style rick house and a Scottish-style dunnage warehouse, kind of mashed together. Mm-hmm. So when you go in, you see huge south-facing windows running down the length of the building. And this is so that, all year round, we can get sunlight into the barrel. So even in the dead of winter, sunlight can get in and keep the ambient temperature up. We're, like I said, we're based in Curraclare in County Clare, and we're sandwiched right in between the Atlantic Ocean and the Shannon Estuary, and we're up on a hill. So it's quite a wild and windy spot, and we're very lucky that we live in this unique microclimate, which is a nice way of saying it could be hailstones, it could be sunshine, it could be pouring rain, all within the hour. You just have no idea what the weather is going to be because we're completely at the mercy of the Atlantic. And so the windows and our insulated roof have kind of helped us to future-proof ourselves, basically. And then we've got a natural earthen floor that's just lightly packed with gravel, and that allows us to control the humidity. So if it's too humid, we can open out the barn doors, let the air rush through to bring down the humidity. If it's too dry, which let's face it, rarely happens, we can just get a hose pipe and water down the floors basically to bring the humidity up. So it's a really natural, hand-driven kind of maturation conditions that we've put together. And then to the back of the rack house, we have our very own Bonders blending room. And in it, we have 3 blending tanks. I say huge blending tanks. For most distilleries, they're more like small little buckets. But because we make such small batches, we don't have a need for like huge bulk tanks, basically. So you have 3 tanks. So the first tank is for vatting the core of our blends of each of our whiskies. And then the next tank is the marrying tank. And it's in this tank that we add in the top dressings. And then the final tank is the proofing tank. So we proof all of our whiskies down really slowly. It's very much like a drip process. And we tend to kind of proof, 1% thereabouts per day. So for any of our whiskies, it can take up to 2 weeks to proof it down because we want to do it really slow, just let everything marry together and sit really nicely, and just not to rush it, not to force it.
And everything's 46, right? But is that a conscious decision, or is that just based on?
So it's kind of become a magic number for us at JJ Corrie. Initially with the Gale, we landed on 46% because that's where we felt the flavor sat right and sat, like that's where it was at the pinnacle of its flavor. And then that just happened to happen with the Flintlock, and that just happened to happen with the Hansen. So we don't set out and say everything's going to be 46%. That's just where it's at. And it also means that we don't have to chill filter We wouldn't anyway, but say for example, when we first released batch 1 of the Battalion, our tequila and mezcal whiskey, that was 43%. And you know, if it was sitting on a shelf for very long, you could see that kind of cloudy suspension starting to appear in the liquid because for the fact that it wasn't chill filtered. That it's perfectly drinkable. You just have to swill around the bottle for it to dissipate, basically. Yeah.
Some people, so people have just sort of made their comments on what Irish whiskies they have had or normally go for, and obviously no one's really come across these. So it's good that we've, you know, hopefully converted some people to trying some new stuff. Shall we try the last one with the Hansen? Pouch one.
Okay, so I have got a little highball glass here. If you have some ice, pour in your ice first and then add in your whiskey on top. So I don't have any ice right now, so we're just going to have to wing it. This is live TV. There's no
ice will make a big difference, right? Because it will really help just kind of
yeah, absolutely. You need ice if you're making a highball. Like that is, you know, highballs are 3 ingredients: whiskey, ice, and your sparkling mixer. So once you build it up with ice and you pour in your whiskey, you're going to grab your Seckford mixer, which is here, and then how you stop it from fizzing over, what you do is you tilt your glass and then you slowly pour it in the mixer. And the idea is that you don't stir, but rather it's the bubbles from the mixer that are going to agitate the whiskey and mix with the whiskey. I'm going to just pour in a little bit more.
So I haven't got a bottle of the Seckford, but we do know the brand quite well. So this one is Seckford is basically is a lady who she liked drinking whiskey, right? That was her thing.
That's it. So the company is founded by this incredible woman called Tallulah White, and she was big into spirits. Her mother was American, so she grew up with bourbon in the household and absolutely adored whiskey. However, you know, look, we've all been there. We've all had the Jack Daniels and Cokes and, you know, Jameson and whatever thrown into it. And the hangover the next day is absolutely excruciating. And it gets very sickly sweet after a while, you know, drinking whiskey with mixers that are really, really, really sugary. And you lose the flavor of the whiskey. So she wanted to create mixers that were low in sugar and specifically created for mixing with spirits. So she has a number of mixers in the range. So this one is specifically for whiskey and bourbon. She's got one for gin, tequila and mezcal, for rum, a really decent selection. So the botanicals used in this mixer is Sicilian orange, rosemary, and gentian. And these work perfectly with the Hansen. So earlier on when we noticed the Hansen, you know, you guys are writing in a lot of vanilla, a lot of citrus, like orange citrus notes. These two pair together, it's really well balanced, and the Hansen really shines through, I feel.
It's so refreshing and nice to have a super sweet bitter taste from the mixer.
It's really well balanced, you know. It's not that sickly sweet flavor. Like you can easily sit back and enjoy a couple of these without, you know, getting that really icky texture on your teeth, you know, like that gritty feeling. So delicious, so refreshing. And over the summer, this is exclusively what we'll be drinking. Nothing else.
Yeah,
Just
that's
Hansen balls.
And you know what, highballs are really popular now. You know, the Japanese are really bringing highballs in to bring in that younger audience.
Absolutely. Like they've turned it into an absolute art form. I love them because they're so easy to make. I am rubbish at making cocktails. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm an expert at mixing drinks. I'm not. But if I can make a highball, anyone can make a highball.
And the thing is, because you've chosen Seckford, right? And Seckford has more than just, it's not just a soda. There's so much flavour going on. As you mentioned, you know, just from reading what's on the bottle, it really helps. It almost feels like you've created something that's just a little step above, that actually is enjoyable to drink.
Yeah, that's it. And I think, you know, it's at the nice intersection. Like, she's a craft producer, we're craft producers. She's very flavor driven, and you know that's what we're about too. So it's just a really nice pairing, and it's just lucky for us that the Hansen and the Seckford whiskey and bourbon mixer work really well together. I don't know if I would pair it with the Gale. I think if I was to mix the Gale with anything, I came across this mixer recently. It's called Merchant's Heart, and they have a pink peppercorn mixer.
Yes.
And that's banging with the Gale.
Is it?
It's so good. It's so good because you have the fruitiness of the Gale offset by this beautiful savory flavor. It's really good. I definitely recommend that one. Yeah,
I'm sure we've used that mixer, but not the pink peppercorn, the hibiscus one, on one of our other tastings. So we might try it. We might try it very soon.
Definitely recommend it. I'm pretty sure you can get it in most shops. So
yeah, you can get it in a few supermarkets now. Yeah. Wow. So JJ Corey, it's have you? So what's the plan for? Obviously, Flintlock will be a different batch, you know, next year. Is it always called Flintlock, or is it something else?
It'll always be called Flintlock.
Okay. And is there another one to add to the core range? I say core range, but
So we're going to move the Battalion into the core range. So we're going to have, so the Hansen is our grain, our blended grain. Gale is our flagship blend. Flintlock will be our single malt, and then the Battalion is going to be our experimental bow that will be constantly available. So the reason why it isn't released yet is just simply COVID completely scuppered the delivery of tequila casks to the farm. So by the time they could ship, it would have been the middle of summer, and that's just not a good time to ship barrels at all. So it's going to be next year before we can release it. But if you guys are on social media, definitely give us a follow. You will be the first to know as soon as Flintlock will be available. And that's a really interesting drink.
Yeah, good. Well, look, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for the time. I'm sure, judging by the comments, we've converted a few people onto JJ Corey. I'll bring Shane in because he will run us through obviously the discounts and everything else that we've got available. Just a quick question. I know there's only 400 bottles. We have a couple, but is there any left that, in case people wanted it?
There is. So we still have a small allocation left in the UK. So if it was a case of you sold out this evening, we can allocate you a couple of more bottles for sure.
Okay. Have we got any actually in stock, Jas, at the moment, or have we just got them allocated?
Yeah, when I ordered a few bottles in, so we will have at least a couple left.
Okay. All right. Cool. Yeah. I mean, so as always, guys, you've got your little tasting card there. So yeah, any bottles that tick your fancy this evening, you get a massive 15% off. So just drop us an email or DM us on the social media with your order, and then we'll get those obviously put through for you. It's hard to say what I think most people maybe go for the Gale. A few people that maybe go for the Flintlock, maybe because of the rarity of it. What's the reason behind just doing 400 bottles? Is it just because they want to keep that kind of exclusivity?
No, there's 3 casks that we selected.
Okay. And I think there was. I tried to make a note if any questions were missed, and I believe there was one from Anthony, which I'm not sure if you got the question.
Okay.
Which was, I'm just trying to find it now. I should have made a note. I think he was asking something about if the whiskies spend any time in the barrel before bottling. I think that was the question of the ones that are blended. You'd have to remind me, Anne, if you can remember what you asked. I'm sure it was that. I can't find the question now, typically.
Okay. Please get it in. If you're
Yes, here we are. Do they spend time in the barrel before bottling? So I think that was in relation to the Hansen or the Gale with the blends.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm reading that in the sense that has it spent any time maturing on the farm? So with the Gale, this is sourced whiskey stock. So we do store it on the farm, but it hasn't fully matured on the farm. This is stock that we would have bought when it was, 14, 15, 16 years old, depending on what vintage it was. But when I talk about our baby whiskey and our 4-year-old whiskey, that's liquid that we sourced from the newer independent distilleries. We match to casks that we sourced ourselves, and that has fully matured in the rack house.
All right, excellent. Good stuff. I think, Anthony, you're asking about prices as well. I'll have to leave Jas to give me a rundown of what the prices are.
I will have to work them out. I didn't even look. I'll have to sort them out.
Yeah. Just drop us an email or DM and we'll let you know what the prices are. I do know that the Flintlock is around about the 150 mark, roughly. So we'll have to obviously exactly get the price on that. But either way, like you said, you get your 15% off, which will take quite a considerable chunk off actually, which is good. And then
I've just been confirmed that we do have Flintlock if anyone does want it.
Okay, perfect. Good stuff. That's good. But other than that, I mean, it just leaves us to say thank you to Neve for obviously hosting and giving us a great tasting. Obviously, we got a treat with the Flintlock, which is great, and some fabulous whiskies. Like I said, I hadn't tried them either, even with the when we were decanting them ready for the tasting. So it's been a pleasant surprise across the range. But yeah, I think for me the Gale is the one that kind of I think overall wins it for the evening.
Anthony, question about the blended whiskey in cut and barrel. I was looking at.
Oh, okay. So, do the blended whiskeys spend time together in the barrel before bottling? No, they don't. So
that was a question. Yeah, sorry.
When it comes to blending, we select the barrels. Everything is disgorged, and then they vat and blend together in our tanks rather than in the barrel. And then we bottle from there. Maybe like from time to time, we might have a blend that we would season in another barrel for a couple of months or a couple of weeks, and then we would bottle, depending on, what kind of cask influence we were going for.
Okay.
Good stuff. Yeah, I think that was the right question. So I got it wrong. Okay, cool. So thanks a lot, guys. Thank you for joining us. We'll obviously leave you to enjoy the rest of your evening. You'll have to let me know. I didn't actually have any Seckford to try that, so I'll have to try and once we get some more in. I know we've got some whiskey left over, so I'll give that a go and give it a try. But by the looks of it, that's quite a good little option for the summertime, which would be good. But yeah, thank you guys. we'll as soon as we know of any other tastings, we'll drop some emails out and make you guys aware of it. But other than that, have a great week, and we'll see you guys all soon.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Cheers.